Right. I want you to confirm, if you are already in the room, please confirm that you are able to hear me. Okay. I've also turned on my video so you are able to see the one who is talking to you. So give me a thumbs up. Yes, thank you, so thank you. All right. So other persons in the room, give me a thumbs up, and that will confirm to me that you are able to hear me very clear. I'm also sharing my screen. Right. So please also let me know. I have disabled your microphone, so you will not be able to speak at this point, but at the point when I'll need you to speak, I will actually disable your microphone. Right. So we will start right away now. Okay. Welcome everyone to this great session that we'll be having this evening. And like you saw from the publicity that brought you into the meeting, it is a discussion on repositioning your nonprofit for financial sustainability. Okay, so the class is focused on discussing some sustainability ideas around non-profit organizations. And it's a global perspective that we'll be having through the discussions this evening. And so, from wherever you are joining, if you are joining from Nigeria, from the UK, from other African countries, all right, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on the one that is appropriate for your location. Okay, right, so we will take off from here right now. I'll try as much as possible on the full view mode. I'm not able to see so much of what will be happening. Okay, so that I will try as much as possible to pay attention if there are things, observation that comes from you, so I can also respond to them. Please use the meeting chat room. The chat room is fully available for your feedback. If you have comment and observation that you want to send in, I would see them intermittently as your chat comes in. Right. And at the end, I'll also give you opportunity to be able to ask questions or make some comments or bring in some feedback that you would have as part of what we'll be sharing. Our intention is to use about 45 minutes for the session and then wrap up the entire meeting within 1 hour. So let's go from here. Right. Why is this needed? Let's start from there. Why is this needed? Why is this session needed? This session we are doing this evening. Why is it needed? Number one, there are global changes in the donor landscape for nonprofit. Like a couple of you here will be aware already, there has been major global changes that are taking place within the nonprofit landscape. It is not new. Those changes have been coming over the last couple of years, but it heightened just very recently with the major change that came from the United States government in terms of the direction that their foreign policy is taking with the coming in of the new president. But I say it is not new because a couple of other governments within the donor landscape have also done something that looks like what the US government is doing right now, but maybe not exactly the same. A couple of years ago, the UK government took such a radical decision also that entirely reformed their foreign policies in the aspect of donor work that they were doing out there. Okay, all right. So you remember we used to have DFID, all right, and eventually DFID went down somewhat, and then we have most of the work that happens from USA and from DFID gone into the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office and all of that. So those were part of those changes that happened, and that brought down so much of donor funds that was coming from the UK government. And so a couple of other governments all around the world have been making those changes over the years. But what just happened recently in the US became very drastic because of one major reason. The US has been a major contributor to AIDS all around the world. Statistic has it that the US contribute about 45% of resources to donor work, to AIDS work all around the world. That is a huge number, from a huge percentage from one country. And that is why the impact is felt all over the world. And so this necessitates that we begin to have some discussions around how nonprofits can reposition in this changing time. What else is the reason why this is needed? There is increased competition for resources within the nonprofit space. Right. We have seen emergence of so many organizations, so many nonprofits in the last couple of years, and this has made the donor landscape to become much more competitive. Right. So over the last couple of years and even right now. So this is also part of the reason why this has become very, very needed for us to talk around this. Another reason is that many nonprofits are now struggling with access to resources with these changes, with these things that I've talked about. Many of them, big or small. I can tell you, I've been in the nonprofit space for about 2 decades, at least for about 2 decades, that's about 20 years. And so I know many of them around my own country, where Nigeria, and then in other African countries. I know many organizations, nonprofit that work within the space. I have also consulted for a couple of them. But I can tell you that many of them are really, really struggling. There are organizations that I'm aware, big organizations that have to cut down their manpower by as much as 80%, some as much as 90% within the last couple of 2-3 weeks of what is happening. So many nonprofits are struggling already with access to resources. That is why we needed to have this conversation. Right? Who is this for? Who is this conversation for? Right? Looking at some category of persons, have you started a nonprofit but have not made significant progress? Maybe you already started a nonprofit a couple of years ago, a couple of months ago, but you have not made the progress that you envisage you should make. And then all of these changes are already coming into the landscape. You are concerned, then you need what we'll be discussing here this evening. Are you contemplating even starting a nonprofit, but unsure what lies ahead? Maybe you're already wondering, you want to start something new, but then with what is happening, you become unsure. What is ahead? How am I going to cope? What am I going to do? Then you need what I'm sharing this evening. Or your nonprofit was doing well, but now struggling due to global policy changes. If you are in this category, then definitely you need what I will be sharing right this evening. And the last category of persons, maybe you work for a nonprofit that has just been hit with a major policy decision leading to downsizing. Like I mentioned a while ago, I know many of them that are going down in terms of resizing, letting go of human resources, letting go because of the stop work order. So maybe you work in one of them and then you've been laid aside. You also need part of what I'll be sharing this evening to think about how to reposition yourself forward from here. What will this do for you, right? Excuse me. What will this session do for you, right? Yeah. 3 cardinal things that have outlined as part of what this session will do for you. Number 1, it will challenge traditional thought pattern that limits access to resources in the nonprofit space. There's what I call a traditional thought pattern that emphasizes donor dependency, waiting for donors to bring resources. If donors, especially multilateral donors, if multilateral donors are not bringing grants, are not bringing resources, nonprofits are not able to work. This has been a traditional thought pattern, and that has limited access to resources for many nonprofits. So if donors are not bringing money, they are not working. And that is also likely part of what has happened with these major changes that are happening within the landscape. So we want to challenge in the course of this training, the session, that traditional thought pattern will be challenged. The second one is that you will develop a disruptive thinking that will reposition your nonprofit. And this is very critical. This is part of the core of what I'll be sharing in the course of this session. Now, the space need disruptive thought pattern, not the traditional thought pattern and the first one that I mentioned. Disruptive thinking is what we need right now to reposition nonprofit within the sector. Look at, and you see that people like President Trump is a disruptor, very critical disruptor. Look at what he has brought coming into power this second time. Look at how everybody is on the run. These are people who bring a different pattern of thought that doesn't seem to be the traditional kind of thinking, that doesn't seem to align to what the deep state thought looks exactly like. So in the course of this meeting, your thought will be challenged so you can think in a more disruptive way as we work within the nonprofit space. Right. Now, meet your facilitator. Who am I? I've come to understand that many times people don't just process knowledge for the sake of knowledge. They process knowledge based on the perspective of who is the one who is talking. And so when I hold sessions like this, I consider it very important to let people know, who am I? Right. So you can connect to the one who is talking and then what he is also talking about. Here. Yes, so who am I? Just a couple of minutes. Let me do a quick check here. Okay, quick check. Right. Good. I want to be sure. Okay, that there are no people in the waiting room. Thank you. Thank you. Here. Right. So let me get back to sharing now. All right. So who am I? Who am I? Meet your facilitator. Meet your facilitator briefly. Here. Sorry, give me a couple of minutes. Let me respond to something that will contribute to making the meeting more seamless for us. There are distractions. I really want to stay on top. Let me see. Yeah. So I can okay. We have a few things around control. Yeah. Right. Okay. So I believe you can still see my screen. Meet your facilitator. Who am I? Right, I am Dr. Japhet Omaye. That is my name. Japhet Omaye is the name. Right. With about 2 decades of experience as a business development and resource mobilization expert and a social entrepreneur, several things combined there. Right. But this tend to sum up what I have done within the nonprofit space for the last 2 decades. I spent a couple of time in business development, and that is the aspect of my work that has to do with proposal writing and business plan development, strategic process development for nonprofits, as well as specialization in that area. I've also had a couple of work generally in resource mobilization. Right, I do very major work helping nonprofits to develop resource mobilization plan, to implement resource mobilization plan over the last couple of years. And then I'm also a social entrepreneur. I've started a couple of businesses, and I've also supported other people to start businesses that are socially inclined in the last 2 decades that I've worked within this space. I'm a certified management consultant and a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultant with accreditation in over 52 countries, right, including Nigeria and the UK, right? And I'm also a UK and Foreign Commonwealth Development Office Chilling alumnus, Right. So if you have heard about Chignin, Chignin is a prestigious scholarship award that is given by the UK government, recognizing people who have contributed to leadership within the development space. And so I was honored a few years back to have received that scholarship from the UK government through the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office. I'm also a certified project manager with APMG International UK. I have worked and consulted for some international NGOs in Africa and in the UK too. I have written several award-winning proposals worth millions of dollars, including grants from the US Embassy, from USAID, from FCDO, and several other foundations. Okay, I have written for corporate organizations, grants worth millions of dollars, as both as team lead and as support team lead across different organizations. I hold 2 masters. I hold a master in public policy, right here in my home country, Nigeria. And then very recently, I was in the UK where I took a second master's in international business and development from the prestigious University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. I hold an honorary PhD in Christian leadership and an academic PhD in governance and leadership. Okay, so I have very specialized skills, academic-wise and in practice in the area of governance. Even in the non-profit space, I do a lot of work that has to do with governance and leadership. So in brief, this is me, your facilitator, right? So let's push it further from here. Okay, right. So I have sectioned what we'll be sharing this evening. I have sectioned what we'll be doing this evening in about 3 perspectives, and I'll really be brief as we journey through them. All right. So, and the first aspect is for me to quickly do an introduction on the trend. I want you to see the trend of how the funding landscape has been for non-profits in the last couple of years, probably in the last 10, 15, 20 years, taking you like a journey down there and then running back to what it is presently. So let's look at the trend. Now, I mentioned this earlier, the trend began from what we call the traditional donor funding for non-profits. And this was the era where you see donors looking for implementers. When I was coming into this sector newly, you see donors with money that they are ready to put into project implementation, but it was difficult to find good, ready non-profit that could take the money and go out. And so you could literally see donors with resources and with money and say, okay, we have heard you can do this, take, go and work. We have heard you can do this, take, go and work. That was the traditional donor funding for non-profit era, where donors were the ones looking for implementers. But then sooner or later, as we journey down, the trend changed. It became implementers now looking for donors. Right, because the sector was becoming more saturated. We had more players coming in. Instead of donors looking for implementers, implementers now became the one looking for donors. And that is the era where writing competitive proposals became much more pronounced. All right. And if you have been in the space for a couple of years, you understand what I'm talking about. It was during the first era, you didn't see non-profit having department that specializes so much around things like business development, around things like proposal writing. They did it like on an ad hoc basis and then used their internal staff to do much of that. But later, when we're shifting to implementers now looking for donors, you see that non-profits now had to begin to have sections that focus largely on business development and driving for resources. And then a little down the line later, as it was becoming more competitive, the trend shifted to, okay, we can't go alone. The first 2 eras, you saw people going alone, bidding for grants, all right, all by themselves. But not too long ago, there was a shift. People now began to form what we call consortium. They formed partnership to say, okay, let's come together as 3 organizations. Let's come together as 5 organizations, and then go look for resources that we will use to work. And then very recently, now this trend came in, the trend of shifting from being non-profits to becoming social businesses. This has not become very pronounced around Africa, but I can tell you in some other stronger economies, I can give you the UK as an example. There is a shifting trend of non-profit now becoming more and more like social businesses. So they operate more as social businesses. I'll talk a little more later as we journey down what really the difference between non-profit and social businesses. And this is the trend now that is holding the momentum. And so the cross of part of what I'll be sharing this in is that as we journey from here, this is the time for non-profits in Africa, particularly, and then of course in other parts of the world to now begin to take this shift of moving from being non-profits to becoming social businesses, because this is one trend that is very, very sustainable, that will keep non-profit for a long time. Right. And to think further along that line, I have put some provoking thought that I want us to think around. And this is now going to be looking at emerging trends, right? Beyond all of those trends that I've tried to put in perspective, what are the emerging trends now that becomes opportunities as we are contemplating on shifting our focus from being non-profit to entering into the trend of being social businesses? So what are the options that are available to consider? And briefly, one major option that we need to begin to consider that is coming strongly is the fact that as a non-profit, you need to think about end income strategies. End income strategies. And this is connected to part of what I mentioned earlier, shifting from being non-profit to becoming social businesses. And now this is where you can now begin to think about, I'm not waiting for donors to come and give me money. I'm thinking about how I can earn my own income, how I can earn my own resources that I'll put into the work that I have to do. All right, so, and as I journey a little bit further, I'll talk more around this. This is part of the contemplation where you now have to begin to think about putting value, putting somewhat of commercial value to the services that you offer. And that way you can earn resources from the work that you do to keep the work going. What else? It is also a time for us to begin to contemplate around peer-to-peer fundraising, right? Peer-to-peer fundraising, where now 2 or 3 more non-profit comes together and then team up to raise funds collaboratively, right? To raise funds collaboratively so they can put into the work that needs to be done. These are thoughts that we need to consider right now within the sector. And then the third one is what I call cost partnership. Cost partnership. These are disruptive thinking that you need to begin to give attention to. Otherwise, your organization, if it is not yet fizzling out, all right, we will soon begin to fizzle out. And I don't want any non-profit that is already listening to me this evening to get to that point. And these are the thoughts that will help. And I should quickly add that these are emerging strategies that I have had my hand tried on a couple of them, and I can tell you, and there are also theories that back these trends up that are proved that they work and that they produce results. So cost partnership is the third one. What is cost partnership? Cost partnership is centered around when non-profits identify a common cause that they are passionate about and they want to work on, and then they now pick that cause and hold it together to begin to drive for resource mobilization for it. For instance, if your non-profit is passionate about working for girls, all right, you look for another non-profit that is passionate about working for girls. And the basis of your coming together first is not even to look for resources. Your basis of coming together is because you have a common cause. I'm passionate about girls. I'm passionate about women. I'm passionate about health. I'm passionate about agriculture. All right, you identify common cause. I'm aware of some of the big players within the sector that recently, even before this issue of change in the US foreign policy came, that we're already aligning along that line. I don't want to begin to call names, okay, of specific organizations. I see on social media, I see on their trend, big organization that find common cause, and then they come together and assemble themselves around that common cause, and then they begin to advocate for resources, advocate for partnership to bring changes into that cause that they are standing for. And then another emerging trend is cross-sector collaboration. Cross-sector collaboration. This is the time for nonprofit now to think more from the perspective of who else is outside our space that we can work with. Who are those outside our space that we can partner with? And this is where I'll begin from government. In any territory, any country, any region of the world where you work, now you need to find out what is the direction that the government is going. What is it that the government is trying to do, and align more of the work that we do. By the way, as non-profits, our work complements what the government is doing. So we find alignment to what the government is doing, and then also be able to get the level of buying in terms of resources. And I'm specifically talking about your local government, now your government within your country, not international government. Right, that is part of cross-sector collaboration. Then collaboration with the private sector. The private sector is one sector that non-profit have neglected for a long time. All right, where you look for their private foundations, their private commercialized institutions, that if you approach them, you will be able to strike some partnership deal that will bring resources into the work that we do within the non-profit space. And then, of course, the last one here is to focus on philanthropic giving. Philanthropic giving. And this is where you begin to figure out individuals all around the world, around your country, that have resources and they want to give into philanthropy. So you approach them. You have to build strategies around this. And I'm going to talk about the strategies that work for philanthropic giving. But there are things you have to do to position yourself very strategically to be able to take advantage of these trends. And then the third major thing I want to talk about as I try to ensure we manage our time effectively this evening is that grants are not gone. And this should actually be good news, because from what is happening, what many of us are already trying to zero in is grants are gone, grants are gone. No, grants are not gone. Even if USAID exit completely, I can tell you that there are still grants. As we speak right now, there are still grants opportunities. People are still applying for grants. People are still getting grants. All right. My own organization is just coming through an assessment process, right, for a grant that we are bidding for. All right. We have an assessment process scheduled, which is happening next week, for a grant that we are bidding for. This is to let you know that grants are not gone. Grants are still available. But there are no twists to how grants can work. There are no twists to who get grants. And those are part of the thing that we must pay attention to in these coming days, to be able to position ourselves effectively to take advantage of available grants opportunities. And what are some of those that I want us to look at this evening? You need to reposition for grants. Now, even though grants are not gone, the traditional approach to grants can't work anymore. With what is happening even with the US government, even if USAID comes back, right, the grant landscape is never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same. The way we do business will change. The way donors give money is changing. So there are several things you need to consider to reposition yourself ahead, so you'll be able to take advantage of some of those. And one major thing that as a nonprofit you should do right now is take an aspect of your intervention and become so successful with it. And what I'm sharing with you this evening is key, and I have worked at this and it has produced results for me too, and it has worked for proven principle that have worked for many organizations. Now, it is not a time to just have a good organizational system and say, I'm going to bid for grant. No. This is the time where you will have to, as a nonprofit, make investment on your own into an aspect of your intervention. For instance, if you are an organization that is working on education, take an aspect of education, say improving learning outcome for children in elementary school. If you take that aspect, invest into it, and like do it like it is a pilot and push with your resources for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years, and ensure that it becomes successful. Then develop a mastery around it that you can prove that, hey, this aspect of my intervention has worked. I have a success that I have documented coming out of it. And while you are doing that, ensure you document and share your successes very properly, right? So take an aspect, I just gave education as an example. If it is in health, yes, take an aspect of an intervention that you want to push in health, right? In community health, you want to do something around access to primary health care, get to a community, pilot an aspect of it with them, document what you are doing, and then share the successes that comes out of it. And this is because of the third thing that I'm going to tell you now. And that third one is for you to cultivate donors through your success stories. What I just said here is big. I'll require hours to unpack it properly, but I will not be able to do all of that because this is a short session we're having. The donor, what donors are going to be focusing on now, they're going to be looking at those who already have successes that they can demonstrate to say, look, this is what we did, and it has worked. This is what we did. This is a success that have come out of it. If you give us more resources, this is what we can do. So in this new era now, for donor funding to get into your hand, you will have to tell your stories. And your stories have to be what? Stories of successes. Stories of successes. Of this is what we went with, what we had. This is what we have been able to achieve. We went with what we have. This is what we have been able to accomplish. If you give us more, we will do more. So non-profit need to pay attention to their work, specific aspect of their intervention, pushing through and ensuring that successes are achieved with that aspect. Right. So now, while you are doing that, you are cultivating an aspect of your work, you are piloting an aspect of your work, and you are proving your successes. You must pay this close attention to building systems and structures that endures. I can tell you, being an active player in the space for the past 20 years, this is one area that many non-profits struggle, especially emerging ones. They struggle with systems, they struggle with structures. If you find a good non-profit who is doing an intervention that seems to be promising, but the system to demonstrate that this can be sustained, that this can work on a larger scale is not there. The documentation isn't done properly. So ensure that you have a systems and structure. Now, when I say systems and structure, you're looking at the aspect of governance and accountability. Ensure that your nonprofit has a good governance and accountability system. And this is where you begin to talk about effective board leadership. This is where you begin to talk about effective vision for your organization. This is where you begin to define things like core value. What is it that your organization is known for? And I can tell you, with the trend of what is happening, and this is where organizations that do not know what they exist for, this is where they will fizzle out. But those who know what they really exist for, those who didn't just come into the space for the sake of coming into the space, those who didn't just follow others to come into the space, they have a well-defined and articulated vision. They have, a good defined core values, why they exist, why, for what, and for who. All of those things are things that will be articulated in your governance and accountability system. You need to have that. If you don't have that, doing the first thing that I talked about, trying your aspect of your intervention and cultivating it to become a success story and using your success story to cultivate donors become quite challenging. Pay attention to your finance and administrative system. Very, very critical. You can't be looking for big money when you don't have the system to account for the big money that you're looking for. Right, things around even as basic as having a good financial policy on ground, things as around as having good financial procedures, right? Things as simple as having quality internal control within your financial system becomes very, very key. So many organizations neglect this. If you do, no matter how you pilot what seems to be working, if they come and see that your systems are not effective, you can't get anything to push your work further. And then, of course, project management. ensuring that, hey, you have good reporting system, you have good implementation system. You don't just do what you do because it comes to your head. You do what you do because it aligns to what is the global practice of project management, global practice for the sector where you are working in becomes very, very important. And then the last aspect of system that needs to be, we must pay attention to is also the aspect of monitoring and evaluation, ensuring that, hey, you have a system that allows for routine check of the work that you do. We have a system that allows for periodic check of what you do. All right. So from what I said now, that gives you just the basic difference between monitoring and evaluation. Why monitoring has to do with routine check, evaluation has to do with periodic check. So there has to be a pattern, defined pattern and procedure that allows you, while you're doing what you are doing, to be able to monitor and evaluate what you do. And it is worth emphasizing here that many nonprofits, they believe that if they are using their own resources to do the work that they are doing, they shouldn't bother about accounting for it. And this is where many miss out on this. And so, because nobody has given you money to work, you are the one putting your money into it to work, you don't bother about being accountable for it. You don't bother about using your system to run it effectively. And at the end of the day, that will not be a way to tell a good story of what you have done. And so when people come looking for you to give you resources, because there is no trace of what you have done with what you had on your own, they can't trust you to give you resources. And that is why I will wrap up here to say that even if the money you are using is your own money, nobody gave it to you. Maybe you are a founder, or maybe your board has contributed money and given it to you, ensure that you account for it. As simple as, for instance, if you have money as a founder or as a pioneer and you are putting it into your nonprofit, don't spend it from your own bank account to do the nonprofit work. A simple use of your system would mean, and I'm giving that as an example, that you take that money and put it into the account that is in the name of the nonprofit, and then that money moves from the account that is in the name of the nonprofit and then it goes to do the work. That way, when you are telling your stories to say, we mobilize resources on our own to do A, B, C, there will be traces of it, of how the money got into your bank, how it left your bank to go and do project implementation, and how it is reported. But when you just take money and then you say, oh, I'm doing charity now, we're doing work now, and then you put it into the work and it doesn't come through your system as a non-profit, you'll not be able to account for it. And that way you'll be shooting yourself on the leg. That is just for example. Ensure you build system and then use your system and structures effectively, even while you are using your own resources. And then invest in technology. As an active player within the sector, many nonprofits, especially emerging ones, these are part of the things they don't give attention to. It will be very, very, what is the right term? You do not sound as like something that should be heard, that in the age where we are, you are a nonprofit and you do not have a website, right? You do not have good social media presence, right? So because we are not being deliberate about investing into what? Into the use of technology, right? There are available tools that does not require paying so much money. For instance, there's a Microsoft space, right? Microsoft 365 that allows nonprofits to leverage what they have to have good emailing system, customized emailing system. Do you know about it? Is your nonprofit taking advantage of it? Those are part of the thing that is required to be done to take advantage of technology to position yourself properly. Then invest in knowledge and skills development. See, you can't outdo what you know, and you can't outdo what you can do. I believe somebody got that. You can't outdo what you know, and you can't outdo what you can do. Yeah, quote it from me. So what you can do is limited by the knowledge that you have, and what you can do is limited by the skill set that you have. And so as a non-profit player, as a non-profit actor, you must be deliberate about investing into your knowledge, about investing into your skill set so you can become better. For instance, in the aspect of proposal writing, make investment, and go and get trained on how to seek for grant, how to search out for grant opportunity. Pay and go and be trained on how to write grant proposals. It will pay off for you. Pay and go and be trained on strategic thinking, how to be able to lead your nonprofit effectively, right? So it requires deliberate investment into it, right? As I begin to wind down from here, where do you begin from? I've talked about the fact that you need to be familiar with the trend and the things to consider. And then I've talked about the fact that grants are not yet gone, that there are things you can still do to take advantage of grants, and that grants are still very much available. So where do you begin from? Where do you begin from? Number one, evaluate and reevaluate your intervention strategies. This is not the time to continue with business as usual, right? As you are looking at the trend and you're considering some of the things that we have shared this evening, begin from sitting down, okay, as a nonprofit, have I been doing well? I have not been doing well, I've been doing well. Evaluate and reevaluate what are the intervention strategies that you have been using. If your focus is on agriculture, on health, on education, sit down and reevaluate or evaluate your intervention strategies and give a second thought to what you have been doing. What is it that has been working? What is it that has not been working? What is it that you can get better? This is the time to take that thought instead of joining the bandwagon to complain, oh, money is gone, there's no money to work. No, sit down and rethink. And then from there, you'll be able to reposition. Then evaluate and also reevaluate your funding model. How have we been funding? If you have been entirely focused on donor funding, now this is the time to begin to think about what are those other alternatives. I have given several alternatives in the course of the discussion coming that you can begin to explore. But you have to evaluate what you have been doing in terms of your funding model, and then you can now begin to think about alternative models that are also available. Then be innovative and disruptive. This is the time to think not outside of the box, right? So, but this is the time to think that the box doesn't even exist at all, right? So don't think outside the box, just think like the box doesn't exist. That means open your mind, think why. There is no limit to how much you can be innovative. And by the way, when we talk about being innovative, innovation doesn't mean bring what has never been done. Innovation is an improvement on what already exists. Innovation is what? An improvement on what already exists, right? So take some deep thought around what has been and what is the better way that it can be done. As you begin to think around this, you will see some disruptive thought coming to you. Be bold and take action on some of those thoughts. They might not look traditional, they might look crazy. In fact, where we are right now, we need crazy ideas. Within the space, crazy ideas are the things that are needed to thrive right now. So bring some innovative thought, be disruptive, and then you'll be the one that partners will definitely begin to look out for. And then this last one is one thing that I major on seriously. And I mentioned some things about moving from nonprofit to social enterprises. This last one is connected to that. It is time to commercialize some products and services. Time to commercialize some products and services. And that is becoming social enterprises. Commercializing here, what will happen is that a couple of the things that you've been giving for free, think about putting some monetary value on them, but you are not going to put so much money that to look like the other people that wants to make profit. Now you're going to put value on it so you can get money to keep paying for the services, for the people to keep getting the services. And that is what social enterprises does. They let people pay for the services that they get, but they don't pay so much that will amount to them making profit, but they pay so much as the people can get a service and they can keep producing the services or producing the product to bring to the people. This is the time for nonprofit to think more from this perspective. I have done this and it has worked. I can give you a vivid example. When we started our own nonprofit work about 10 years ago, largely we're working in health, we're working in education, we're working also in economic empowerment for households. And so I was quick to take thought around pushing one aspect of the services that we're giving, and that was in education. And so we checked this aspect of services that we're giving, can we also take this aspect and make it commercially oriented? We did. And so we decided to commercialize an aspect of education. And we went into running some private educational services right shortly after we started our nonprofit. And I can tell you, it wasn't long. Our donor funding went up. We're not having so much money coming from donor, even prior to this time coming. But the aspect that we commercialize in education kept running. And the little income that we're having from there kept that arm running and kept our non-profit running at a low scale without so much doing so much. But then we maintained our existence because we're able to commercialize an aspect of our service, and people were paying for it. They were getting the services at reduced rate, but we had the resources to keep it going and to keep running. And I know a couple of non-profit that have done this, and it's part of what is helping them, even with what is happening now, to stand very, very strong. So give a strong talk to this. It's time to commercialize some aspect of your product, some aspect of your profit as a non-profit. And that is where being innovative and being disruptive will come in for you to be able to push beyond where you are. And the last thing here is linked to that, second to the last that I mentioned. While you are trying to commercialize your product and commercialize your services, target the bottom of the pyramid. Target the bottom of the pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid is the part that is usually neglected in business because people think that there are no resources there. And by the way, when I say bottom of the pyramid, it's a business term. Let me show you the next. I have it here as a picture so you can relate to it. So in business term, this is what the bottom of the pyramid looks like. Of course, the normal pyramid that you know with the base being the largest, and then as it goes up, becoming more tighter. So in business term, we use it to refer to three market segments, right? Up there, that is where you see where you refer to as mature markets, and that is where you see the upper class, right? People who earn big money, people who are doing well. Unfortunately, up there, we have a very limited number of people who make it to that upper level. And then the population that are there are just less than half or a billion, or about half a billion that are up there. This pyramid is taking into consideration the fact that the world population is around 6 million to 7 million. That is the benchmark that I'm using here. All right, let's say a population of about 7 million or 6.5 people all around the world. So look at just half a billion is what is up there. When you come down a little bit to the middle, that is emerging market, you have about 2 billion within that level of the pyramid. But when you come to the base, look at the number that we have there, 4 billion. All right, the middle and the upper put together does not even equate the number at the bottom of the pyramid. So the bottom of the pyramid, you have larger number. But the issue with the bottom of the pyramid is that the people there usually have low income, right? They mostly do not have stable income. Their income is seasonal. And so there's a wisdom around targeting the bottom of the pyramid. As a business person, I can tell you that part of the wisdom of targeting them is to understand their income pattern. And so if you're going to be commercializing some part of your product, and you're going to be targeting bottom of the pyramid, and they exist in every market, they exist in every country. All right, so if you're going to be targeting the bottom of the pyramid, you have a larger number of people to reach. And if you have a larger number of people to reach, you now need to plan around understanding what is their income pattern. For instance, there is a part of the target population where we work in Nigeria that we are thinking of. We know that these people have their income within a period of a year. They have so much money flow to them, and once that season is gone, almost through the year, they don't have money anymore. And so in our educational services that we provide, we are trying to target that region in such a way that instead of making them pay termly fee for the children that they put in education with us, we want to do it in such a way that that period of the year that they have so much money coming to them, they pay for everything that they should pay for their children in school with us within that period. So that is planning products and services that can target the bottom of the pyramid, understanding the pattern of their income, understanding the pattern and the characteristics that how they operate them. So target the bottom of the pyramid as you design, you reposition your nonprofit in this space, and ensure that You target them with product and services that suits their market, that suits their characteristics, and you'll be able to thrive within that space. Right. And that is it as I begin to wind down from here. Okay, beyond all of what I have said, what can we do to help you beyond this session that I'm having this evening? Of course, we can help you with further training, okay? And with our training, we can transfer knowledge and skills needed to you. We can also develop, you'll be able to develop capacity that you need to start to run and to finish well. At a time like this, when we are talking about repositioning, so more knowledge, more skill set are needed. Okay, so we are available to be able to provide those additional support that you may need. We can also help you with coaching and mentorship. Right. Coaching and mentoring is a little bit different from training. In coaching and mentorship, we are helping you to explore your options. We are helping you to explore the opportunities that are available to you and how you can make the most of them. Right? How you can make the most of them. And so in coaching and mentorship, we hold your hand and say, this is where you are. We have been here with you. We want to see how we can move with you from where you are to where you need to be. So we are available to be able to do that. And then so that will mean that we will hold your hand, walk you through, because we have been there where exactly you are desiring to go. And that is where you come to the point where we have a very strong nonprofit that is well positioned and is ready to run and is ready to not just last for a season, but stay in business for a long time. I'm a strategy expert. I'm a governance expert. I'm a business development expert. And that is my passion. I want to help nonprofits, especially emerging ones, to be able to become formidable and strong nonprofit within the space. So you can get into further conversations with me, and my team will be available to support you further in that line. All right. You can send us an email. All right. That is our email there. Maybe you can screenshot this, but if you have received any email from us recently, you would have also seen that this email is what was used to send you an email, info@japhetomaye.net. You can visit our website at www.japhetomaye.net or at geoglobalconsult.com. You can also reach us on WhatsApp with that number that is there. And you can also follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, or the handle would come at Dr. Japhet Omaye. Right. And so that is it. Thank you so much for being available to come through this session with me this evening. I think I didn't do so badly with time, so I've been able to keep my time properly coming there. So thank you. Okay, if you are still in the room, and I see a couple of you still in the room, so I want to hear from you. Do you have a question? Right? You have a question, or you have any contribution that you want to make? Right. We're ready and open to hear you right now. Okay, so you can indicate, you can raise your hand if you have anything to say, and then we can hear you briefly. So thank you, over. So if I see your hand up, then I will let you talk to us. Okay, Marvis, right. Okay, let me quickly handle the settings so I can allow people to unmute and speak. Good. Right, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yes. So Mavis, I saw your hand went up. Your mic has been enabled, so you can unmute and then you can talk to us, please. Hi, Mavis. If you are talking, we can't hear you yet. Okay, right. Or you can use the chat room. I still can't hear you. Right. So if you want to use the chat room, you can type in, but you can also unmute, except if there's any challenge from your end. So it will be good to hear you. Yes, Any other person? You have any thought? You want to say something? Let's hear you. Right. Okay. So if I don't see any hand up, that would mean that, okay, nobody wants to say anything. Okay, and then we can wrap up from there. Okay, people. Mavis, are you saying something? We can't hear you. Your mic is not muted, but I can't hear you. Maybe you type in the chat room. Okay, unfortunately, I can't hear you. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the information. Hopefully, I get to learn more. Okay. Rex. Okay. Thank you for that. Constance, as a newbie, where can we start from? I told you where to start from, depending where your organization is. So you need to reevaluate and evaluate your system, and then right in terms of access, if you want to learn, let us know the specific aspect you want to learn, right, and then we'll be there to support you further. Mavis is speaking. Unfortunately, I can't hear him, and I'm sure, is any other person able to hear Mavis? Can any other persons try to speak? Let me see. Constance, are you able to unmute your mic and speak? Let me confirm if it is from the challenge with Mavis only.
Okay, I'm speaking now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good, I can hear you. Right. Okay. Mavis, I can't figure out what is the challenge.
He has dropped a question on the chat room.
Okay. Yes. Right. Mr. Dan, how are you doing? Bamina, good evening, sir. Good to have you here.
Dr. Japhet, you are doing a great job. How are you doing today?
Evening, sir. How's the family?
Yeah, we are doing great. We are doing great. We are doing great. Nice job.
Right.
Keep up the good work. It's an amazing discussion, and I'm sure